welcome to Secular Sexuality. I'll be your host tonight, Christy Powell. Joining me today is going to be some very funny ladies. We have the ACA's newest friend, blogger and activist, Viva la Bianca, as well as a friend of the show, area comic and meme queen, Lana Del Cray.
Hey.
Howdy, how are y'all doing tonight?
Doing good.
Great, glad to hear it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank everybody out there for joining us tonight. I want to let you know right here at the top that we're going to be talking about women in comedy, about the gendered expectations and sort of the women aren't funny meme that has been prevalent in our culture for so long. And we would love to hear from you. Love to hear about the women that have been important in your life, your diet of TVs, of sitcoms, of stand-up, of everything along those lines. We're going to be here at 512-686-0279. That number again is 512-686-0279. We've got a few slots already available, and we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'd like to just kind of touch base a little bit, and before we, dive into talking about Lana and her experience as a comedian, I'd like to even address, why is there even a different word for lady comics?
I don't know. I think, it probably, just back in the day, someone was like, you gotta have different gendered words for stuff.
Yeah.
I wish I could say there was, some sort of fancy French definition or something.
It actually relates to the original Greek. On this particular week, when we're talking about the U.S. national team versus the U.S. women's national team and all of the kind of bullshit and second-class citizenry, or maybe the asterisk that we tend to put on things, rather than having a men's and a women's, we have the default and then the alternate, and that's such a big piece of our culture, without even talking about all of the long history of, a woman can be funny when she's reacting to a man, but who would want to watch a scene with two women? Who would want to watch a female comic? Who would want to see, there are obviously some poster childs and some exceptions going back throughout the years, and I don't want to diminish the accomplishments of a Lucille Ball or Ellen DeGeneres or however far back we want to go. But at the same time, there's always been a very limited, appetite in our society for that sort of thing. And I struggle to wrap my mind around it, because I know that I am not the funniest person who's been in this studio. I, every Monday morning, go back and rewatch myself and think, oh my God, you are not that funny. Why can't we get more Serafina in here? Why can't we get, more of these wonderful comics and these incredibly funny ladies in here doing this job, because they're clearly better at it than I am. So now that I've mansplained our culture to you and told all these jokes about how not funny men are, I guess I'd just love to hear what it was like growing up as funny ladies, as people, as human beings in a society where humor is not really prized, I guess, in your gender.
Yeah. Oh, me. No, I was gonna say, growing up, I definitely, I don't know, I was always that weird kid that got made fun of a lot, and was definitely the butt of the joke most of the time.
Yes,
I would say
the hero comedian's journey.
Yeah. One day I'll die a villain, but it was definitely it wasn't until high school and then graduating and moving to Austin that I really started having people around me who really encouraged me and were hey, you're actually seriously funny, even if because you eventually you just start using humor as a coping mechanism and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
once people are oh wow, you're really good, you gotta change your whole angle, and it's so, and I didn't even really think about pursuing stand-up comedy until I met other comedians, and ironically they were dudes, but they're my comedian big brothers.
Mm-hmm.
But just one day I was at an open mic and they were just go up and do it.
Just do it.
It was my first the first joke I ever did. It was the open mic at Spider House, and I was going through a really rough time, and a couple months earlier I had a stupid Tinder date and I like threw up on him, and so I just told that story, and like everyone loved it, and I was like, okay, maybe like I can turn all these terrible events into funny stories. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, you say ironically, and I think that makes a certain kind of sense, but it also seems somewhat inevitable that the people who are already part of the comedy world were dudes, and that the people who, I don't want to say gave you access, but that were maybe encouraging you to get up there were men or people who were there themselves.
Yeah.
And it's pretty overwhelmingly male-dominated. Is that your experience?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially like most of the open mics, like at least it's starting to change a lot now, but like what was it, 3 years ago when I first started, it was like all dudes hosting open mics, and it's always like at some sketchy bar or something, and so it's like late at night. So it's like it's definitely intimidating the first couple times, like as a woman, but if you like stick it out, it's definitely really fun, and you meet a lot of like other women. And luckily, like in Austin, we're so lucky that there's so many talented female comedians and really pushing for our own shows and stuff. So there's definitely been a big turn recently, but yeah, it's still heavily like male dominated, especially in like the open mic stand-up scene.
I've got a question, and this is not to assume that you bomb ever, but have you found either with yourself or watching other comedians that there's a difference in reception when maybe a set isn't going so well? Like, is there more tolerance for one gender or another as they're up there and being like, oh no, I forgot the joke.
Poor guy's trying so hard,
Right.
but like,
No,
get this woman off the stage!
No, bombing's bombing. Even like the dudes, like no, we'll boo the dudes too. Like it's no. There's a lot of like definitely like unfunny men. Like I'd say like for every like one dude that's trying, there's and like genuinely funny, there's like 10 dudes who are very unfunny. And I think that's another reason it can feel especially like oversaturated, especially in the open mic scene, is because like it's open and anyone can go. So like with booked shows that you're going out and doing, like it's definitely, I think, would be different like if you were booked on a show and you started bombing, but like you probably wouldn't get booked on that show again. But no, it's definitely like it's I don't think the reception's that different. I think like if you're not funny, you're not funny, and people aren't gonna like you. But like I think definitely like being funny is where the big difference is.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because like if like a lot of times dudes will do like let me like do a joke about how I can't get laid, and like people will still laugh. And it's like, okay, they're not bombing, but it's not necessarily original.
Right, it's rehashed material. I mean,
exactly.
Jerry Seinfeld did that to death 30 years ago.
Exactly. So it's like they might like still, you know, like get like a laugh here and there. And I think it's if like a woman like was just like, oh, I can't get laid, like it probably wouldn't get received as well. But like when you kill it though, like it should be like it feels the same though. Like just like everyone's like laughing, and it's a great feeling.
So the highs are the same highs, male or female.
Yeah.
The lows are kind of the same lows, male or female.
Yeah, it's
but
just
that
like,
middle, that mediocrity that, you know, we all strive to transcend, but in reality, many of us find ourselves living there.
Yeah, and I think that's where you can like really tell the difference is like what level of mediocrity people are like willing to tolerate from people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that I know at least as a woman, like you're kind of trained to laugh at guys' jokes. Like that's considered polite. It's like, oh, he's making a joke. I must laugh at this, even if you don't find it funny. Like, is that?
I mean, it's definitely true. Like in one-on-one scenarios, I don't think I've ever felt obligated to laugh at a dude's joke.
Really?
Like,
I have to say, it's delightful when it happens. There have been moments where I have sat down and just felt like, you are crushing this date, man. You are just nailing it. And then I get a little bit of hindsight and I'm like, oh, that wasn't funny at all.
Yeah, Yeah, no, it definitely, like, I felt, like, obligated, like, scenarios like that where it's, like, one-on-one or, like, in a group of friends and you're just like, oh, I don't want you to feel awkward. But, like, I don't, like, if I'm in an open mic, like, I'm not just gonna laugh at it, dude. I don't know. Like, that's me. I don't know if, like, I'm probably, like, a bad person to ask that.
I've got just terrible secondhand embarrassment. So I'm like, oh, one person has to laugh. I guess I'll, like,
I'll take this
woman
one
up
for
and
the
be
team.
this one.
Yeah, like an awkward, nervous laugh. I mean, there's been some like awkward. So I host an open mic, which is rough sometimes. But like, so you see a lot of dudes who just aren't that great, and so sometimes I do just have like an awkward, like nervous, like laugh, like, because I'm just like, oh my god, is this over? Because it's 10-minute sets, and like for a lot of beginners that's like hard if you don't have like a full 10 minutes, and it's it's not easy, and there have been some huge awkward moments, especially like if it's like they try to do crowd banter and they're like, because then they like try to like
And
talk
it's
to
a
like
dead room.
yeah, and like because the people at the bar, they're just there drinking, like they don't want this like,
Don't talk to me, man. What are you doing?
amateur comedian trying to like roast them. And so like I'll try to like, but like I feel like I do it in a way that it's super obvious that it's a nervous laugh and they should cut it out, but I don't know, it's probably too late. Sorry.
When somebody's committed to failing, like
Yeah.
it's just gonna happen.
Yeah, no, and like and there's like definitely like a certain level of like I admire people who can just do that, like, and just keep going and not have anxiety about it, because like I know like there have been times where I like start bombing, and if it's like a longer open mic, then I'll just like I'll take the L and like I'll go. I'm like, okay, this is an off night. I need to go home. Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like the audience more or less generally treats people with something resembling a meritocracy. I don't mean to like overhedge, but overall, if you get up and you're killing it, you're doing what you need to do, it's working. People are buying it. What about behind stage? I mean, what about booking? What about, you know, in terms of just getting notoriety or getting accepted?
Yeah, so that's definitely where the huge difference is. There was recently like a conversation in like an Austin comedy group about like trying to see more women come out, and this one chick was like, oh, well, I really like to see like women going out, and you should be hitting open mics like 5 nights a week and like really pushing and like doing as many sets as you can to get your name out there. And it's hard when you have like a full-time job and a family.
Right.
And something someone brought up that I thought was really important is the like whole burden of the household thing. And a lot of times like women do have to manage a household and stuff, and you might not necessarily be able to go out as much. And I know like a lot of people's like argument to that is like, oh, well, if you really want something, you like work for it and stuff. And it's like, that's not always possible. And it's like, it would be nice to see like people not care about like how many mics you're going to or how many shows you're doing, but like the quality over quantity. And at least for me, like that's where I feel like I shine the most, because it's like I've never been able to just like go out like consecutive nights in a row and like stay out at open mics and like mingle and schmooze with all these dudes and stuff, and it's like that's never gonna be me. But like I know that like when I like write something and like I'll try it out at my own open mic, and I'll like do 1 or 2 like mics when I have time, but like if someone books me for a show, like I'm ready and I can do it, you know. Yeah.
And it's also the perception. Even if you don't have like a household to manage, when a guy goes out 5 nights a week to do comedy or pursue whatever, it's like, oh, look how committed he is to this. Like, like
you gotta follow your
applaud
passion.
him. Right.
Yeah.
And then more often than not, especially like with women who maybe are not like college age, or like you assume they have other responsibilities that are like supposed to be taking precedence. It's like, well, why are you here and not there?
Yeah, and it's like, oh, why are you like out drinking 5 nights a week and stuff? And it's like,
Right, exactly.
I'm not out at the bar drinking, I'm doing comedy.
Right.
It's like, yeah, so it's definitely, it's a weird perception, because again, most people assume like, oh, like women like have their shit together and are more mature and stuff. And I mean, like, yeah, but like not really. It doesn't correlate with like the comedy stuff. But yeah, no, I definitely like, I don't know how to like describe it. It's like, it's weird, like the judgment that you get sometimes from it. And also like, I guess like professionalism's like a big thing too, because it's like dudes like because they can like there's not that like level of like maturity and professionalism like required from them a lot of times. It's like, oh, they can just like go up on stage, like do whatever, go to like another open mic, party, and then like just go back the next day. And like, I don't know, there's a lot of like dude comedians that are like, they still like work in like food service and stuff, and it's like, cool, I guess that's your hustle, but like, I don't know, like have some other priorities and shit too.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's more about even like the presentation of it. Like a guy can come out and be like rumpled, like he just like walked out of his car or whatever, and that's like part of the look, you know?
Yeah.
But then you
like
see some of these female comedians
yeah.
and you're like, oh, she has to be like this particular body type and like super dressed up and have her makeup done and then talk about all the things she did before she got here. And it's just, there's a higher, I feel like, standard in terms of presentation that happens.
Yeah, and like that's not just in comedy. It's like I feel like a lot, like even in like gosh, it's like weird I like brought this up like last time I was on here, but like in the kink community too, like a lot of dudes will just like show up and like pants and a t-shirt, and it's like, oh, I like put all this effort in, I like did my
Women
hair
tend
and
to be
makeup.
expected to be in costume or doing something just more elaborate,
and it's a lot of effort and it's exhausting, but like it's worth it. Like definitely, like I'm never gonna like go out and not do that. I just I wish there was like that same standard for men, and I guess that's what it really comes down to, is there's just like this higher standard of what a woman like should be, whereas like any dude can just like roll in and do whatever.
Yeah, I don't want to overstress the importance of conventional attractiveness, but I think that if we take the top 10 female comics and the top 10 male comics and put them through the like hot or not algorithm, there are not a whole lot of people swiping right pre or post controversy on Louis C.K., whereas Katharine Hepburn and like these different folks have this very different angle that they're coming at it from.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I was last night I was like sitting there like watching those GQ videos, like the anatomy of a scene where like they have the actors like break down their different roles. And like I was watching the Seth Rogen one, and like I've never seen Knocked Up before, and so I didn't like know it was a thing he was in, but like just like
doesn't it, even though you haven't seen it, don't you kind of feel like you have?
Yeah, no, like listening to him explain it, and like I get it, it's like a generic like romance comedy, but like I was just like, damn, like we really like we're supposed to believe that like Seth Rogen and the chick from Grey's Anatomy like had a baby, like I don't know. And it's like, again, like I don't want to like sound like conventional attractiveness, like I'm not picky, like I don't know, like, my friends will definitely tell you that I have terrible taste in men, but I don't know, Seth Rogen just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that at all.
Yeah, we generally go ahead and agree on that. I don't really know how we got here, but I think we can go ahead and say that consensus is that Seth Rogen not the most attractive comic in Hollywood.
No.
Yeah?
Possibly.
Okay. All right.
Possibly.
Yeah. I would like to remind the audience that these views do not represent the official positions or statements of the Atheist Community of Austin or the Atheist Experience Network. However, not the best looking person. Okay. Well, fair enough. I guess I'm curious what the culture is like with just other comics. I mean, you are largely in a big showcase, going to be, if not the only woman, oftentimes one of the only women. Is that tricky at all?
I usually okay, this is I kind of like keep to myself a lot, just because I'm so busy with like the rest of my life, and like comedy is definitely like a big like creative outlet for me, but like I try to like not get involved in like comedy drama. Like I'll see it, like I'm Facebook friends with everyone, and so like I'll
comedy drama is like a whole subsection of humanity I don't get to participate in.
There's too much tea. But yeah, no. So I mean, like I've never been like I felt like the token like chick on a show. Like it's always been like me or like another chick. So maybe I guess like they try to have like a token 2 chicks per show. I always like
Hashtag progress?
yeah. And like I've booked one showcase myself. Like we tried to do a showcase at Giddy Town last month. Or not tried to, we did a showcase. It was very good. But I was like, oh, I'll just book like one token cis white guy. Like that'll be fine. And the rest of the comics I booked were comedians. And there's a lot of not a lot of, there's like 3 shows specifically in Austin that are just like all women showcases. I should remember the name. It is. It's like, I think it's called Hear Me Bitch. And then the other one is, it's hosted by Leah Sampson, who is really funny and hilarious, and you should Google her and like find that showcase because I can't remember the name of it.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll get that pulled up and make sure to have it in the footnotes for the episode.
Yep.
But I guess I'm curious about. I don't know if I'm missing the boat here, but it feels like Austin has this really interesting and incredible burlesque community, which sort of strangely like bolsters female comedians. Is that, am I getting that right at all?
A little bit. I've definitely noticed there's like some burlesque shows that'll have comedians, and then there are some like burlesque performers that do comedy. So there is an overlap, but I don't even know if that's still like just an Austin thing, because there's like an overlap with like the burlesque scene and Rocky, and then like comedy and Rocky, and then kink and burlesque, and then like comedy and
people who are
like,
out, and in a city in a city this big but a town this small, you know, that
and it's
overlap happens.
Yeah, it's like I get a friend request and I have to like look at my mutuals and be like, okay, what like scene are they in? And like a lot of, there's so much overlap, and it's like I think like everyone like that knows me from something different, which is weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's definitely like I feel like there's like the entire performance arts community in Austin is amazing and like really supportive, and just really great and like creative and helping like support everyone, and like really like reach out and support and find each other venues, or be like, oh well, this place is like open to new things, or like this bar is looking for a show. And like that's how I ended up hosting my open mic, was someone like just posted on Facebook like, hey, this bar that I go to like wants to start an open mic, does anyone want to host it?
Yeah.
And yeah, I
So
think
it's about
like
knowing people and hustling and just never saying no.
Yeah, pretty much. I think like almost all of like my comedy opportunities have come from just like people Facebook messaging me, or like just commenting on a post or something.
Hey, that's the way to go, word of mouth.
Yeah, it's pretty great. But yeah, I love the burlesque scene, and the like even like there's a whole wrestling scene that I recently like started, because like there's
I love our small weird city. To anybody watching far afield, I mean, I know we have a huge audience in Europe and places all over the world. Austin is just an incredible place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's actually like how I found out about the wrestling scene, was like a stand-up comedian that I hung out with. He was like, yeah, I'm doing this wrestling show. And then like some of the people from the wrestling show I remember hosted a burlesque show that I went to. And I was, it's just everyone is just like really great and creative.
Well, you said it's like kind of like the whole performance art
yeah
type situation. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we were talking just before the show about just the experience, or what it's like to be, I guess, kind of out in these ways, or to be performative, to be on a stage, to be, you know, here I am as a therapist, and while we don't necessarily get into like super detailed things, I'm very cognizant of the fact that, you know, somebody who comes into my office might potentially see this show and learn way more than they wanted to about my specific penis, which, you know, I want to model that, you know,
comfortable. To the unspecific way.
Right, just like there's a vague concept, like the platonic ideal of a dick, which is very different than my dick. But that being the case, comedy tends to be very, very intimate. And so I'm very curious what it's like to be, you know, talking about bad dates, to be talking about these experiences on stage, and especially in a culture where, you know, women talking about sex, women talking about their bodies, women talking about a lot of the things that has been central to stand-up comedy for so long, what the experience is, what the pushback is.
Oh man, it's wild, and a lot of the pushback is from dudes, like, cause I guess like dudes are like, oh, she's just telling jokes about her pussy, like it's whatever. Am I allowed to swear, right?
Oh yeah, you're goddamn right.
Okay. So like I've definitely like
The rule apparently is just don't talk about your specific pussy. It just has to be, the indefinite, the concept of a pussy. Right. That's the line that we try to draw here.
It's a very like dudes just are real uncomfortable like talking about like vaginas and makeup and stuff, and it's hard, and in a lot of ways I feel like that's shaped my comedy a little bit. Like I'm less reactive to criticism from dudes now, like I can kind of filter it out, but like the first set I remember like not going great was I told it was this terrible joke about like how I like saw a dude do coke in front of me for the first time, and like and I talked about how like I like fancy cheeses from Whole Foods, and I'm not like a cocaine girl. it was admittedly a bad joke and structured very terribly, which is why I'm not going to tell the full joke. But afterwards this dude came up to me and he's like, you shouldn't have so many jokes about how you're so like bougie and girly, and I'm like, oh okay, so like so it's definitely like when you're like 19, 20, like you kind of like listen to that, but now I'm so wise at 22 I can kind of like be like, fuck you, I'm gonna tell this joke about mascara and orgasms. So it's, I don't know, I think you just gotta get better at like filtering out and like understand there's always gonna be dudes who are like critical of like what you're like saying and your thoughts and feelings and stuff, but they at the end of the day like they're not the ones who matter. And like the same thing with like race jokes and stuff. Like I have a lot of jokes about like specifically being a black woman, and I remember like one time like someone came up to me and we were like, I just don't like how you guys like all tell jokes about your race. It's like, we get it, you're of a different race, but you don't have to just like point that out all the time. And I was like, but that's like what makes it funny. It's like, this is my outlet and I'm like sharing my experiences, and like it's part of the creative like and comedy process. So it's like, I feel like if you're not hurting anyone, you should definitely be able to like say whatever you want on stage. And it's hard, especially like having like just that like double overlap of like not only like female jokes but like black jokes and stuff, and it's like the same people who like criticize you openly like making fun of stuff in a lighthearted way are the same people who will probably laugh at like an actual racist joke or like an actual like transphobic joke or something, instead of like someone that like fits that representation like making it funny themselves. So it's kind of like a terrible double standard, but it happens.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. And comedy is a field where you are like going through the meat grinder and constantly looking for feedback while also hating it, because it is such a scary thing to do. And to not be able to trust the feedback that you're getting because it is coming from all these different angles. I remember when Dan Harmon was kicked out of Community by NBC and all of the drama that came with that, how one of the biggest frustrations that came from the woman that he had really just been harassing was that even as he was like picking her jokes and complimenting her, it completely ruined her concept for like her own barometer, her ability to tell whether or not she's funny when her boss was coming to her and complimenting and criticizing her sense of humor for these like completely unrelated items.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's kind of, I don't want to make, again, broad assertions, but I feel like it's interesting that you bring that up, because that's kind of the experience that I know I've had just in general. Like, okay, you're saying this thing to me, it's a compliment or it's an insult or something. Are you really complimenting me for that? Is there some kind of ulterior motive behind it? Like, are you saying what you mean? So it is definitely a thing, not just in comedy, probably accentuated in comedy for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of used to having that double standard in our head and being like, okay, we have to be careful about how we take this.
Is it like, oh, does he just think I'm funny because he's trying to sleep with me? Or like, does he not think I'm funny because he's threatened by me?
Yeah, I mean, how does a conventionally attractive woman have any concept of her own intelligence, of her own sense of humor? These things that we measure through a looking glass self, these things that we can't measure without hearing feedback from other people, when that feedback is going to be so constantly colored by dicks.
Yeah, no, that's like, really enough, like, I just like only trust like my straight chick friends and like my dude friends that are already like married. So like that's it.
If sex is off the table, then you start to bring it in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I definitely hear that. I wanted to take a couple of minutes and play a quick game with y'all, if we could.
Yeah.
As we're getting ready for that, I do want to remind folks that we do have some lines open. We're going to be here at 512-686-0279. Again, that's 512-686-0279. And so jumping into that, what I'm going to do here is give y'all, we're going to be talking about some comedy legends, right? Some famous women in comedy. And I'm going to give you just a couple of trivia facts as we go. First person to figure out who it is and shout out the name wins a point. And I'm just going to keep giving more information until somebody gets it.
Okay,
we got the games?
How far back does this go?
How far back? I'm 22. Got the advantage here. I should be competing. I think 1960 would be about the cutoff.
Okay.
Well, we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see how it goes. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see. First comedian. She's a published author. She does many roles behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera. She's not only funny, but she is a LGBTQIA activist. And
Ellen? Is it Ellen?
No.
Oh.
Close in a lot of ways. Ellen, but also a activist and a member of the Black community.
Oh, Issa Rae.
Close.
Shonda Rhimes.
She's quite the stand-up comedian.
Wanda Sykes.
Bessie the Count, Wanda Sykes.
Okay,
yeah, there we go. I like that you're like ready to jump in there.
Yeah, you've got.
You got to get more aggressive here. This is going to get messy real quick. Okay. All right. Somebody who in an older era guest starred on many game shows. Eventually went on to have her own show.
Oh, Carol Burnett.
You're right in the neighborhood. This is the first woman to win a daytime Emmy.
Lucille Ball?
And her golden years have not slowed her down.
I mean, I'm basically resigned to my fate at this point.
No, we got a few more. Okay. This young actress does not do stand-up, but is still super funny. She also has quite the singing voice. She's dabbling in producing and turning it into a triple threat. Her name suits her as she breaks all of the rules, and she crushed it. She's known for a very slapstick sense of humor. She's known for being body accepting and body positive. She's had a lead role in Super Fun Night as well as the Pitch Perfect movies.
No, God, I forget her name.
Are they on SNL?
Rebel Wilson. Rebel Wilson.
Yikes. Oh, killing me. Okay. All right. A comic whose first big hit was far from a comedy. Her next big hits were all action comedies, including, and this is true, one where she starred opposite a Velociraptor / T-Rex as a detective. Y'all, you're too young for this. It's fine.
Okay. I want to see this.
She's been married 3 times. She is the only comedian that I'm aware of to have ever starred in Star Trek. And
Tig
she has
Notaro?
Tig Notaro was at Star Trek?
Yeah, the most recent one.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Okay. The more you know. And she is known for having very strong views that she often shares on TV.
That's every comedian.
And
Does
literally
nobody love
everyone
Whoopi Goldberg? All right.
Oh my god!
All right.
It's like literally everyone's been on Star Trek at one point.
Every-
The View.
The View. Yeah. Okay. All right. Last one. This is somebody who got her start as a stand-up comic. She was once named Showtime's funniest person. She has won 30 Emmys. 30 Emmys, 20 People's Choice Awards. 2 of her shows are actually named after her. And if you haven't guessed it yet, you should just keep
Ellen?
swimming. Yes, it's Ellen.
She had 2 shows.
Right? Yeah. Oh, gosh. Man, I feel so old right now. Nobody remembers Ellen? Okay. All right. All right.
I mean, like the talk show.
Yeah, so she had listen here, young ladies, and let me school you on the history of your people.
This is embarrassing.
But no, it was a huge moment when Ellen, the character on the television program Ellen, came out as gay.
Right.
You can, in a lot of ways, like split network comedies in half pre and post that announcement, which was just almost 22 years ago, as I recall. And was significant. Without that, you don't have Rosie coming out a few years later. You don't have a lot of things. It was pretty meaningful in terms of queer representation on film. And even though the show was past its prime at that point and kind of wrapped shortly afterwards, they left with a lot of dignity. It was not what we were previously used to in terms of that being just the end of a career. Never mind to say that Ellen has gone on to win like an unprecedented number of Emmys. I don't know why our culture has this weird habit of taking our greatest, brightest, most wonderful up-and-coming stars and giving them shitty talk shows that nobody watches. Like R.I.P. Seth Meyers. Like, I miss you, buddy. You used to do funny things, and now it's. I don't understand why talk shows still exist in 2019, but that's a whole separate conversation.
Dude, I feel like Trevor Noah could have had such a good like sitcom or something instead of the Daily Show's still good, but he could have had like a really amazing.
His stand-up is amazing.
Yeah. Oh gosh. So.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Pour one out for the homie.
Yeah, right.
Well, with that, I guess I just wanted to ask y'all a little bit about, whether it's Ellen, who is great, but I also don't mean to like prop up as the only important comedian in history. But who was it for y'all growing up that felt important, seeing a woman on stage, knowing that women could be funny, whether it was watching, I almost said Jane Curtin, and I was going to mention other old-fashioned Saturday Night Livers that, again, are wasted references at this crowd, but I guess,
said Carol Burnett.
Okay, that's true. I guess I'm just curious, who were the funny ladies growing up that inspired y'all, or to let you all know that it's okay to make jokes?
Kathy Griffin. I remember watching her stand-up specials on E, and all the controversy at the time, and then oh man, just even still now that Trump head picture, and then she had the Shane Dawson interview, and I admire how always open, and how much she spoke her truth, and her mom. And then my first girl crush was Sarah Silverman.
Yeah?
Yeah, the Maxim cover where she's in the gorilla suit. That was my first gay.
I'll be honest with you. Jesus' Magic was one of those specials that made me actually stop and ask myself, holy shit, am I a Christian because my parents are Christians?
Oh no.
Yeah, no, it was weird because it was the same time that the Jonas Brothers came out, and I was just oh. Yeah, and then my mom had a boyfriend who just had a shoebox full of Maxim magazines, and I found one day, and I remember the chicks in the bikinis and stuff, like that wasn't like what was doing it for me. But yeah, for some reason, just like her just being in that gorilla suit and like being hilarious and like talking about comedy, like the interview in that. I actually read the interview. Was really good.
You kept that issue for the articles, what you're telling me.
No, I had to put it back in the shoebox under the bed. But no, that always like stood out to me is just like, oh, like this, there's like not one specific type of like sexiness and like that being like funny and comfortable. And like also ironically, I'm kind of a furry now, so like, you know, it's like it's it's a give and take kind of thing. But yeah, no,
it's just a lot of ingredients in that stew. Really came together for you.
Yeah, looking back, that magazine was pretty instrumental in my formation. And then Fran Drescher, again, like just funny ladies with great voices.
Yeah, very distinct voices, and I think that raises a really interesting point, which is that when we talk about comedy, we're talking about wit. You know, whether you have to be quote unquote intelligent or what that even means. We don't need to break all of that down. But when we're talking about being funny, we are talking about being quick, being clever, being cutting. You know, willing to be insulting. I mean, anything other than demure, anything other than what women are expected to be or trained to be in so many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think like being a comedian too, like there's so much like room for like variation. And it's like there's not even like one type of like comedy. It's like I mainly do stand-up stuff, but like there's a lot more women in like improv. Which is really amazing. It's not like I don't have that like kind of like fast paced like improv.
Yeah,
I spoke way too much for that. But like I think that's definitely like where that like quick wit really shines. Like me, I like to like have my stuff written down and like rehearse it and stuff. But like conversationally, like I can still like kind of come up with like good banter and stuff. But yeah, no, it's definitely like I think improv is definitely where a lot of that like quick wittedness and where women like really shine with stuff. Improv, oh gosh, sketch comedy. Oh, I fucking love sketch comedy. Broad City is like my favorite shit.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then was it Hargnall and Sclocleopepia? It was this Adult Swim
You
show.
have lost me entirely. I'm ready to go back to talking about Saturday Night Live and Mad TV and I guess old people shit. Fuck, guys, I'm 31.
Okay, so Hargnall and Sclocleopepia it's on Hulu. It was one season on Adult Swim. It's Brad Neely's Hargnall and Sclocleopepia. So Brad Neely, he does China, Illinois. Nothing. Okay.
Yep. Nope. I will have to look this up and include it in the footnotes so that everybody has a chance to figure out what the hell we're talking about. Kids these days, they say the darndest things. Sconolaminopodopia.
No, like the name intentionally like doesn't make sense. They wanted it to
is untranslatable.
Yeah, and then every episode is like dedicated to a celebrity. It's oh my gosh, it's the funniest shit, and like it's just so absurd and doesn't make any sense, and it's like that perfect like niche of like Adult Swim stoner comedy, which like I just if I ever like like one day like cross is this a wooden table anyway knock on wood that like one day I can do shit like that where it's like Broad City, like Hargnall, like some Rick and Morty just off the wall type shit.
That sort of nihilistic, like absurd stoner stuff.
Yeah, like that's my niche. And Canadian, or no, not Canadian, Australian. There's like this. Oh gosh, what was her name? It's like Danny something, but she's the only other comedian I've seen that wears a fanny pack on stage, and like she always wears like knee-high socks. And I forget if she's Canadian or Australian, but she's hilarious, and she has it's that the song where it's like my dad's voicemail list or something, or anyways. But it's like really good, and like it's again like just crazy musical, like off the wall, like Bo Burnham. She's like a fanny pack knee-high sock wearing Bo Burnham. It's great. But yeah, no, I love that like that quick-witted, just off the wall, like crazy shit like that. And like one day I'll get there.
Oh yeah, no, Broad City was huge when I found that. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be okay. Yeah. Because like you look at them and they get into the worst, and like weirdly it was like helpful for my anxiety because I was like, oh wait, oh, this is literally the worst case scenario every time.
I've definitely never done that,
and,
so
and they're
I'll be
still
fine.
alive and having fun. So okay,
Yeah.
maybe life isn't terrible.
Like for
the
me,
fact
that's
that women-
always. I'm sorry.
Well, just how about the fact that women can be dirty, that women poop, women like sex, women, you know, are
they're
as
fully human.
human as men are.
The episode of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where they like trick Dee into thinking she becomes a famous stand-up comedian will always be like my favorite episode, and I'm always worried it's gonna happen to me one day. Like that's my worst case scenario. But I figured like, okay, like if that's like my worst nightmare and she got through it, I can do it, which like is a terrible thing to say about it. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Because she also did crack, and I'm not gonna end up doing that. But still, it's like, I don't know, like it's like it is comforting to like see these scenarios and like see other women like being funny and able to like handle those scenarios
and
stuff.
laughing about it.
And laughing
Because it's
about
not,
it, yeah.
it doesn't always have to be like, you know, the morality drama where like,
Yeah.
and then she strayed and became like the saddest woman in the world because she sinned, you know? It's like, oh, she can laugh and get back up and keep doing her thing.
Yeah. And I love that that's like changing like the narrative around a lot of life stuff, because it's like sometimes shit is like scary and anxious and stuff, but like being able to laugh at it at the end of the day is like definitely like the biggest relief for anxiety ever. Well, that's all off, but yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. I watched Nanette, Hannah Gadsby's special last year, alone in my apartment. I was not ready. I was not ready. I
had to turn it off. I had to pause it and come back to it.
Yeah, I was-
because of how emotionally jarring that particular program could be. It's available on Netflix. I would very much
go watch
encourage
it.
people.
Go watch it.
Hannah Gadsby is the comic. Particularly her special Nanette is available. But go ahead.
But like, apart from the fact that like I ended a comedy show both like fully satisfied with all the jokes, but also like bawling my eyes out, was in and of itself like an amazing experience that I had not seen before. But also kind of going off of what you said, like as long as you're not hurting someone, you should be able to say whatever you want on stage. And I feel like that's always been this contention with me, because the only time I hear that is when there are like these you know, male comedians who are like, I just want to make rape jokes, you know, and I should be allowed to do that. And
It's my First Amendment right.
Right. Yeah. And like I've always had this tension where like, I don't know if I agree with that. Like in theory I do, but also like I know you're not going to use it wisely or well. But she proved that like you can talk about anything. Like she talked about everything. Like she just laid it all out there, but it was in a way that was so tactful and respectful and funny. And it's more like, yes, you can talk about anything, but you need to be good enough to talk about anything, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's definitely like the biggest thing. It's like if you aren't gonna like be respectful about the topic and be genuinely funny and making a positive point about it, like why do it? It's like okay, anyone can get up there and like say some like fucking
As the rules of comedy in general. Yeah.
but like like it's shitty, but yeah, they can get up there and do it. And it's like, I'd like to think that, you know, they wouldn't get booked and stuff, but they do.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but like, you know, you just have to like keep pushing for like that change. And I definitely like, at least like, I guess going back to that like Facebook comedian drama, like there's definitely been a huge like push to like get these kind of like shitty men like out of scenes, and like, you know, like there's like, you know, comedian Facebook groups and stuff. So it's like we talk like we're all like, oh, like this guy did this, or like, and it's like, okay, let's not book him, and like we'll, you know, and like I was saying, like my like shout out to Wes Corwin, funniest person in Texas. But like I was saying, that's like my comedy big brother, and like he is like super receptive, and like I'll be like, hey, this guy did this, and he'll be like, cool, I'll let everyone know, not like all the promoters and stuff, not to book him. Like it's we're very supportive, and I think again because like Austin and like Dallas are like again very close knit performance communities, that we definitely look out for each other and try to like, you know, pick the best people. And that's not to say like we're not gonna just like randomly ostracize someone just because they're bad at comedy.
Sure.
It's like you have to like do something like harass someone like be kind of a shitty person.
Well,
And then,
I'd like to talk a little bit about the audience for these sorts of things. I mean, we live in a world where IMDb had to change its rules because before Captain Marvel had even come out, so many 4chaning dude bros had decided that they couldn't stand the concept of a strong, independent woman superhero, fictional character.
Right.
By the way, or, where it turns out it was apparently not just that funny of a movie, but everybody was just ready to hate the concept of female Ghostbusters, to say nothing of a Black Mermaid, but that's a separate topic for a whole other day. And I apologize if this is uncouth of me to mention on air, but I'll let y'all know since you don't. We are getting calls today. There are people calling into the studio, but we haven't taken any of them because the call screener and I have been communicating about how many of them are trolls, perhaps offended by the fact that here we are talking about women getting up on stage and being in comedy. We talked before the show about how there is a troll culture and how there's something of a target on your back when you mention certain items that just offend people, whether it is, ethics in gaming journalism, whether it is the idea of a woman daring to pretend to know or understand how to write about video games, or daring to stand on stage and try to be funny. And I guess I wonder what it's like just existing. I don't ask for a simple answer to that, but how do you be?
At times it can be a little rough. Like I haven't had too many like terrible experiences. Like I said, I did have get back to earlier, that joke I had about like seeing a comedian, someone do coke in front of me. It was another like comedian, and when I told that joke, I didn't use his name on stage or anything. But afterwards, people were like, "Hey, you need to stop telling that joke. That dude's gonna like be like super pissed and like he thinks you're like talking shit about him." And I'm like, "Bruh, I'm like a 19-year-old girl. I didn't say your name."
Yeah, if he outed himself,
like you were doing coke out of an Altoids tin in front of Spider House. Like, how can you like? It's definitely like dudes are, I don't want to say like fragile, but like they have like fragile ass egos, and it's like not obviously like not all men, right? But like still it's hard, like even like within the comedy scene and like audiences and stuff, like I have like non-comedians like added on Facebook and stuff, and like sometimes I'll like share something and they'll be like, "Oh, well, like, what about this?" or like, like devil's advocate and shit, and I'm like, okay, but that's not what this is about. Like,
right.
And also even like if I'm being funny, like there was an incident that happened in the comedy scene, and I like tweeted out as like a joke. I was like, next time you're considering hiring or booking a white cis male comedian, pick literally anyone else.
I remember reading that.
And
people came after you.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, first of all, I wasn't completely serious. Like, it was a joke. But like afterwards I was thinking about it, I was like, fuck, if that's how y'all are gonna act, like, fine, I won't book you. But like I was saying, I always I in the future, if I do keep booking shows and stuff, I would like to have, at least one token dude. And like I said, it's not all dudes. There are some wonderful comedians. Shout out to Wes and Blake. But like, it's hard like having these like toxic people on the internet and stuff, like just being like, oh, well, you can't like say this and you can't do that, or that's a bad take on it. And it's like, it's not, it's life, it's real, and it's what's happening, and we shouldn't be forced to like share the same spaces as like abusers and stuff, because it's shitty. And again, I wasn't even saying like all like male comedians, but like a majority of them like are just like really sensitive and like have like awkward social skills and stuff. So it's like it can be uncomfortable, and like I don't know. It's just like it's hard to like, I guess, take them seriously. Like, because like part of me is just like, oh, just like fuck this, like I'm just gonna do my own thing, and then part of me is like, well, this sucks, like they're not gonna like my comedy, and I'm like, oh well, I guess they don't really matter. Yeah, but yeah, same goes with like, I think if it's like an audience or just like random troll, like it just like at the end of the day, like they're not gonna like physically hurt me. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty exhausting place to be, male or female, getting up on stage. I guess my final question for you tonight is, why? You know, what do you love about it? I mean, what is it that
Attention.
I feel like, yeah, I believe that, but I mean, comedy is one of those things that I feel like every drunk asshole on their third beer is like, I can do that shit.
Yeah.
But nobody ever actually stands up and does.
Yeah, or when they do, it's bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's like my favorite thing when like drunk people at the bar are like, I can be funnier than that guy, and then they get up and then they just like flounder around and like then they like tell some like old like Seth Rogen joke or something. But yeah, no, I think it's the feeling you get when you have like a really, really good set and people are like funny and they're coming up to you afterwards and it makes you feel like a mini celebrity. And it's like, like I did that show last month and it was like my first showcase, and afterwards this lady asked to follow me on Twitter, and I thought that was like the hugest thing ever. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the 2019 equivalent of asking for my autograph. And I was like, damn, my first like comedy Twitter follower. And like it's such a great feeling, and like it sounds like so narcissistic to say, but like just like the thrill of like people like laughing at you and clapping and having it be a positive thing. Same reason I did Rocky. Same, yeah, like it's
to remind folks, you were introduced to our show working with we're working with a Shadowcast to perform the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah. Shout out to Brian's orchestra. I keep saying shout out to people. But yeah, no, it's that like that thrill of performing, and it's like really satisfying, and I don't think like there's ever going to be a point in my life where I am not some kind of performer. I don't know if like I'm always going to be doing like stand-up comedy. Like I said, I do like hope one day I can like transition into sketch comedy. This whole podcast thing has been working out pretty great for me. I love memes. Like it's like the same like feeling. Like I don't know, just like a weird like dopamine, I guess. Just like, sure. Yeah, it's like, but I think like having a really good set and having people like share for you is like better than like 1,000 likes on Facebook. It's like in person likes.
That might be the most millennial sentence I've ever heard in my life.
Gen Z.
I guess I'm just gonna go home and be the oldest person in the world now.
I'm so sorry.
Wow. Okay. Well, with that, I suppose I'd love to just thank you so much for joining us again, and to V for braving the studio and being a part of our conversation. To everybody who joined us tonight, I would love to hear from y'all about the inspirational comedians. And just the experience of increasingly seeing visibility, of seeing more women in front of and behind a camera doing more than just, pouring drinks for the protagonist. So with that, again, we'd love to keep the conversation going. Be sure to check out Lana Del Comedy on Facebook. And feel free to shoot us an email. That's sex@atheist-community.org. And until then, we'll plan on seeing you next week. But for now, we would like to encourage you to go home and give yourself a big old orgasm. Or, better yet, give somebody else one.
Consensually.